Yes, well, Maeva Hamadouche successfully defended her IBF super featherweight title against Janeth-Perez and won the fight in the fashion which I predicted. You know, Janeth, she had 1 or 2 losses, but she had never been stopped, and I predicted upon the announcement of the fight that there's a first time for everything. And for Janeth-Perez,
this would be the first time
that she gets stopped. You know, the fight only went 6 rounds. The ref had seen enough. You know, Janeth, she was eating too many hard shots, not coming up with much of a response for those shots, aside from just hanging in there while being forced onto the ropes due to the overwhelming pressure of Maeva Hamadouche, something that she is characteristically known for. Those that know of her know that she is an unrelenting puncher. She's a swarmer, she's a pressure fighter, that's her bread and butter, that's what she's good at, and that's how she gets the job done. And that whether you want it to be a close quarters phone booth fight or not, it really doesn't matter, because in all likelihood, that's what it's going to be, because Maeva Hamadouche is going to make it that kind of fight, that kind of a war. Because her pressure fighting is bankable. Doesn't matter what kind of opponent it is, doesn't matter what kind of base style they have. Whoever finds themselves confronted with Maeva Hamadouche is going to find themselves in an inside fight, an inside shootout, and that's because she's making it that way. A lot of fighters, you know, they find themselves confronted with her and they are unable to hang, unable to deal with the pressure. You know, you see fighters like Delphine Persoon, Maeva Hamadouche, you see their implementation and you tell yourself that, you know, yeah, it's effective, but they're not very polished. You know, their implementation may seem a bit crude at first glance, but what you've got to pay attention to is that it is consistent. No matter what kind of opponent they're in front of, no matter what their level, what their base style, the pressure is consistent. And this rings true with Maeva Hamadouche, that she may not be as polished as an Eva Brodnicka or an Eva Wallstrom, you know, those champions. And she may not be as polished as a Michaela Mayer or an Alicia Baumgartner, you know, tacticians, strategists. She's not a polished boxer in all the ways that they are polished boxers. But her pressure fighting is more bankable than what those fighters have put forth, because her pressure fighting is consistent. So it's always a question of whether or not the other girl can hang with Maeva Hamadouche's overwhelming pressure and punching power. I've no doubts that, you know, for any promoter or any manager out there looking to get their young up-and-coming prospects a world title opportunity, I've no doubts that Maeva is an unappealing option for them. That's the last choice. That's the last place that they would look to get their fighter a world title opportunity, because nobody can bring the pain and bring the pressure at super featherweight better than Maeva Hamadouche can. She's gutting, she's gritty, she is dangerous, and she can be a handful for just about anybody at the weight, whether they've got a belt or not. You know, these contenders, these young up-and-comers that we're always talking about here on the channel, yes, they show a lot of promise, but even they could suffer a loss at the hands of Maeva Hamadouche. So congratulations to the reigning IBF super featherweight champion in what is yet another successful title defense. I banked on Maeva not only winning the fight, but stopping Perez, and that's exactly what she did. We then turn to what I like to call the injury report. It being that a number of fights the last couple of days have been canceled due to injuries. Injuries incurred in preparation for those fights, well, at least 2 of them. You know, Garcia, he was supposed to be debuting at heavyweight against Joey DeVaco. You might be familiar with that name, Joey DeVaco, because that's the same Joey DeVaco who's rumored to have hurt Anthony Joshua in sparring leading up to what was the Andy Ruiz fight. Well, apparently, Murat's not going to be fighting him. He's not going to be making that debut on that scheduled date, because apparently he's pulled out with a shoulder injury. We then turn to a card I talked about yesterday in my previous video in regards to Jose Benavidez squaring off against the seasoned vet Luis Collazo. Well, apparently that fight's not happening because Jose Benavidez injured his leg. And only a couple of hours ago, in regards to a fight that I was talking about only a couple of hours ago, John Molina has pulled out of tomorrow's pay-per-view card, the Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman pay-per-view, you know, a fight he was supposed to be having against Sergey Lipinets. John has pulled out of that fight with what is rumored to be a back injury. So Sergey's going to be fighting some other guy on the card. You know, the show must go on for Sergey, but for John, get the Bengay, okay? Now, I don't know what John could have been doing so soon, you know, only really hours before the fight. I don't know what he could have been doing that he would have hurt his back so much so that he's got to pull out. I don't know, because, I mean, all the preparations have been made. I would have assumed that he'd have been resting or something like that, but apparently that's what the rumor is. He hurt his back, so he's not going to be fighting. It is what it is. And I'd have to say that out of the 3 fights that have now been canceled due to injuries, the one I'm most disappointed about is the Garcia versus Joey DeVaco fight, because I'm of the opinion that the aesthetic of that fight would have been very fan-friendly, very entertaining. Both Joey DeVaco and Garcia are punchers, you understand? And they're both, on the smaller end in terms of heavyweights. So there's a good chance that it would have been a close quarters fight, a phone booth fight, a fight that could have actually been a hard fight for Garcia, because Joey DeVaco, he's trickier than he looks. And I think he could have made things interesting in that fight. He certainly made things interesting in the Sergey Kuzmin fight, a fight that I'm not convinced Sergey Kuzmin really won, quote unquote. So if I'm really disappointed in regards to one of these cancellations, it really is that one. The other 2, I can live with that. I can live with that. Those are fights that can be postponed to later dates. Things can, be done. But I was really looking forward to that Garcia versus DeVaco fight.
Moving on. In other news, Rob Brant's promoter, Greg Cohen, has informed Steve Kim that Rob Brant had a rematch clause ahead of what was that rematch with Ryota Murata. And that is a rematch clause that he plans on exercising. Ladies and gentlemen, what we could be looking at is a rubber match. These are just my thoughts. For starters, given what took place in the first fight, and given what took place in the second fight, the question becomes, is there even a precedence for a third fight?
Is there?
Do we really need it? Do the fighters need it? Is there any reason at all to stage a third fight? And I dare say yes. I dare say yes. Oh, we may not be as excited about it. We might not. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But is the precedence there? Oh, yes, it is. And here's why. 2 big reasons. The first reason are the performances that both fighters put on display. Rob Brant put on a very dominant showing in the first fight, you understand. For every 1 punch that Murata threw, Rob Brant threw 3. Outlanding the guy, outworking the guy. Combination punches from the opening bell to the final bell. It was one-sided. It was a one-sided beating. You turn around, you look at the second fight, the second set of performances, and the performance that Ryota Murata put on was a one-sided beating. He beat the fucking brakes off of Rob Brant. The fact that these guys are tied up right now in what were dominant showings. Rob had his, Ryota had his. That does open the door for a third fight to really settle it. The tiebreaker, the rubber match. That's the precedence. And the second reason is that, Rob Brant, Ryota Murata, they're on the top-rank ESPN side of the street, right? So all the other big-name middleweights, in the division, they're on the DAZN side of the street. And you got Jermall Charlo over there on the PBC side, but he's an island over there. He doesn't got a lot of people to play with over there. It is what it is. Better still, the middleweight division and the big names within it are divided. So if they can stage a rubber match to keep these guys busy and further build upon what they've already built with their first 2 fights, I'd say it's a good use of time. I wouldn't mind seeing them move on to other things, but if they are to go ahead with a rubber match, I'll say it's not a bad idea, it's not a terrible idea, and there is a precedence. And the winner of the fight gets to move on to bigger and better things. I do wonder if Ryota Murata's people are going to be on board. I mean, if Rob has a rematch clause, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot they can do about it, because, if they walked into that agreement, if they walked into that situation, that doesn't leave much wiggle room once the ink dries on the contracts, okay? So I'm not sure that they can even do anything about it if Rob Brant so chooses to invoke it. But is there a precedence? Yes. Am I overly excited about it? Not really, but I'd definitely watch it if they decided to do the dance for a third time. So I get it, I get it. And, there is a precedence. I mean, it's not the first rubber match the sport of boxing has ever seen. I know that rubber matches can be sometimes far and few these days, but there's been plenty of rubber matches when it comes, historical precedences. Yes, did you guys forget Holyfield and Riddick Bowe? They fought 3 fucking times, those guys. Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti, 3 fucking times those guys fought. How many fucking times did Sugar Ray Robinson square off against Jake LaMotta? So yeah, there's a precedence. It's not the first rubber match the sport of boxing will have seen, and I certainly don't think it'll be the last. We'll see what develops. Moving on. In other news, former unified 140-pound champion Ana Laura Esteche was back in action last Friday, having shaken off the cobwebs from what is over a year's hiatus from the sport of boxing. Before last Friday, the last time that Ana Laura Esteche was in action was way back when at the end of 2017, where she lost a decision to what was then the WBC champion, Erika Farias. A lot has changed since then. This is not the 140-pound division Ana Laura Esteche
left in 2017.
was when she left. You understand? Things have changed. World titles have changed hands, and it's a very different division right now. It really is.
Than what it used to be.
So she has this little comeback fight. It's a 6-rounder against a journeyman kind of opponent with a losing record, more losses than victories. I mean, I think the girl's got something like 12 or 14 losses to only 5 wins, so it's obviously a tune-up fight, I mean, I don't even know. Better still, she fights in this 6-rounder, she wins this 6-rounder, and you gotta wonder what the future holds for her, because I'd have to say that the two girls holding the world titles right now is Cristina Linarda II, holding the WBO, and Jessica McCaskill, holding the WBC and the WBA. Funnily enough, the IBF title is listed as being vacant right now. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Whereas before, it looked like it was in possession of Victoria Bustos. I don't know what changed. I don't know that she vacated it or was stripped of it. Not completely sure. But what we know right now is that the blue belt is listed as being vacant. You think about these things, the topographical environment of the weight class, and if the IBF title really is in fact vacant, that would be Ana Laura Esteche's best chance of winning a world title, because I'll tell you right fucking now, I don't give her any kind of odds to beat Cristina Linarda II, and the same applies to Jessica McCaskill. I don't give Ana Laura Esteche any odds to win a belt from the girls that are actually holding the belts. Her only avenue to a world title would have to be the IBF route, a title that, at least right now it appears, no one is holding. That's her best bet at becoming a world champion. Again, that's her only bet, in all honesty, because if she finds herself confronted with either McCaskill or Linarda II, I'd pick either one of them to start her. It would be an interesting fight, would be a gunfight, but I don't think it's a fight that Ana Laura Esteche can win. Interesting developments in the 140-pound division, and we'll see what happens now that the former unified champion is back in the mix. And finally, this next story is per Mike Kopinger's sources that apparently Mikey Garcia is engaged in advanced talks with Eddie Hearn for what is a multi-fight deal that would bring the former 4-division champion over to the DAZN side of the street. Now, this story, it broke a couple of hours ago. Haven't had the chance to talk about it. Big weekend of fights, but better still, one has to wonder, what does Mikey Garcia really have on his mind right now? Not too long ago, the conversation was him potentially going back into a relationship with Bob Arum, with Top Rank, a potential Lomachenko fight. That was the conversation not but 1 or 2 weeks ago when Mikey Garcia was seen at the Ray Beltran versus Richard Commey fight. And this came out of the clear blue sky, left field, out of nowhere, that Mikey may be going to the DAZN side of the street. And at minimum, what this communicates is that whatever Mikey had going on the PBC side of the street, it's not something that he wants to continue to do. That whatever plans, whatever options, whatever was available to him via the PBC, it's not something that he's on board with, and he is shopping around. So what are the possibilities if Mikey Garcia were to cross over to the DAZN side of the street? Let's be honest, ladies and gents. On the DAZN Matchroom side of the street, you got Haney at 135. I mean, that would have to be one of the biggest, names at 135 that they've got. Just as well, you've got Maurice Hooker at 140, the WBO champion, a weight that Mikey Garcia is likely to campaign in the near future. But the thing about Hooker is he's about to have that fight with Jose Ramirez. So who's to say that he'll still be champion by the end of the fight, by the end of the night? I mean, these are legitimate queries, legitimate things to be addressed, that if Mikey is window shopping and he's interested in what DAZN has to offer, his opponent options and what opponents are thereby made available to him, that has to be addressed. I don't think that Mikey Garcia is going to DAZN
because he wants a Devin Haney fight, you know? I mean, it doesn't make sense. You know, that Garcia versus Haney. Yeah, it'd be a good fight between a prospect and a seasoned vet. But all things considered, if Mikey Garcia were really interested in making a splash and making a killing, adding to his bank account with anyone at 135, it'd be Vasyl Lomachenko. You know, that's the fight. That's the one, you know, that'll get you paid. And that would require him to go to the top rank side of the street. So I don't think Mikey's going over there for Devin Haney. And Maurice Hooker, you know, he's a world champion right now, and maybe he'll become a unified champion after he fights Jose Ramirez. But is that really why Mikey's considering going over there? There are questions to be addressed here as far as why Mikey is now looking at DAZN.
What does he want?
And if he were to go there, what fights would be thereby made available to him? What would he be doing there? We're talking about a multi-fight commitment, people. That's more than one fight. So for more than one fight, who would Mikey be fighting? Now, I gather that Mikey going to DAZN doesn't close the door
completely
on the Vasyl Lomachenko fight. Him entering in an agreement with Eddie Hearn, it doesn't close the door on that at all, because Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum worked together to put this Hooker versus Ramirez fight together. You understand? So it doesn't close the door on what could be Mikey Garcia versus Vasyl Lomachenko. It's just that a more immediate path, a more immediate route to a Loma fight would be to sign to Top Rank or to enter some kind of an agreement with them. I mean, that would be the way to go. Maybe Mikey doesn't really want to do that. After having worked so hard to get away from Top Rank, maybe he's not too keen on signing a contract with those guys. He just knows that whatever PBC had going on for him, he's done with that, and he doesn't want to continue anymore with it. That's what this communicates. At minimum, that's what this could be, that, you know what? Whatever PBC had in mind for this kid, he don't want to deal with that bullshit. He's so much, it's so much so that he was actually looking into something from Top Rank, and now he's looking into something from DAZN. That's what it communicates. That whatever PBC had going on for this guy, whatever suggestions they might have made to him, for him, moving forward, it's not something that he and his team are on board with. Now, this is preliminary news, so there's only so many inferences we can make that are based on something real. We have to let the story develop. We have to see how the cookie crumbles and what will be announced or what won't in the next couple of days. Let's wait and see.